rebate would incentivise the uptake of EVs within Australia by making them more accessible, affordable and desirable to the everyday commuter. There are over 20 million registered motor vehicles in Australia, and of these, only 83,000 are electric. This should make policymakers and governments start to wonder why there are so many barriers to purchasing an electric vehicle in the first place. With the New South Wales government investing $171 million into charging infrastructure across our state, with charges at every 50 kilometres along Sydney's major commuter corridors and every 100 kilometres along our major highways, it makes sense to incentivise EVs in order to get the most out of these investments through rebates. Currently, New South Wales offers a $3,000 rebate on the first 25,000 battery electric and fuel cell vehicles sold under 68k, and it's wax stamp duty on new and used EVs under 78k. But these rebates pale in comparison to what's available overseas, when these countries are progressing rapidly towards their net zero targets and electrifying their fleet much faster. Norway currently has the highest rate of EV uptake in the world, with 75% of their vehicle fleet being electric. People are more keen to buy electric over petrol or diesel vehicles because the Norwegian government has abolished road tax, sales tax and import tax on these vehicles and is providing rebates on parking fees for EV owners, proving the efficacy of this policy through Norway's status as a world leader in the EV space. As a result, Oslo, the capital of Norway, is going to be the first fully emissions-free city in the entire world by 2030. The UK's plug-in car grant offers a 35% reimbursement for the purchase of new EVs and a 20% reimbursement on electric vans, and rebates are available for chargers purchased in the home and the workplace. In combination with banning the sale of petrol and diesel cars and vans by 2030, the UK is already halfway towards achieving its net zero target. By contrast, New South Wales aims to be net zero by 2050, but it's uncertain how we will get there considering our poor incentive programs and the slow uptake of EVs in the state. This will only be worsened by the impending road use tax on EVs of 2.8 cents per kilometre starting from the 1st of July 2027. When Victoria introduced a similar tax, albeit a less value, of 2.6 cents per kilometre, it was described as the world's worst EV policy, and it instantly caused the cancellation of 243 EV car registrations. It doesn't make sense to be taxing a technology that the government is trying to get people to uptake, especially when EVs have the greater potential for innovation and integration of new technologies such as automation and CITS versus ICE vehicles. A tax would drive away people and businesses from investing in EVs with vast ramifications for carbon emissions, considering the average age of Australia's vehicle fleet is 10.1 years. That's another 10 years of contributing to large tailpipe emissions, with every EV sale lost to petrol or diesel by this tax.
So, we are supporting electrical vehicle taxes and investing in public transportation. Electrical vehicle taxes type of levy impose the electrical vehicle owner as means to generate revenue for the government. It aims to balance the costs associated with the use of roads and infrastructure. Which is traditionally funded through gasoline taxes. EV taxes are linked to ensure that electrical vehicle owners contribute their fair share to maintain transportation infrastructure. The primary purpose of EV taxes is to prevent an uneven burden of road funding, and electric vehicles currently do not consume gasoline and therefore do not contribute to gas tax revenue. By implementing EV taxes, governments can generate income to support road maintenance, construction, and other transportation-related initiatives. Also, we can use the taxes for the investing in transportation, public transportation, such as creating job opportunity in construction and infrastructure development.
Great. So one of the biggest points that the opposition has made is about EV cars not paying the road tax. So even though they still produce non-exhaust emissions like public transport, their usage of road contributes to the need for maintenance and regular upkeep. aren't present on our roads in large enough numbers, so with the use of an effective rebate, the effect that the EVs will actually have in comparison to the vehicles that are already on the road are not significant enough for this tax to be on them, especially considering the environmental and health benefits that EV bring through the zero emissions. So EV cars, they don't produce any CO2 emissions compared to regular cars. In this debate, we're not trying to say we shouldn't have public transport. We're trying to say that EV cars are a better substitute instead of like petrol cars. As we saw in our graphs today, petrol cars and trucks, they produce an insane amount of CO2 emissions. Also, in terms of public transport, although it is good, not everyone can use public transport. There's a huge percent of people that still need to rely on vehicles. Some of these include people who live in regional areas and don't have like public transport near them today. So for example, say in Sydney, in the city, we have like all right public transport, but even if you go like up the coast or down to the south coast, the public transport there is almost non-existent. People who also work in emergency services still need vehicles. For example, an ambulance, we don't want to be on public transport if we're trying to get to a hospital fast, right? We also have people who work in trades with all their equipment in the back who also, they can't just get on public transport. So this conversion to electric vehicles for all of these cars I've just mentioned would have a huge effect on reducing CO2 emissions. So there shouldn't be, so we should continue to push for electric vehicles because not everyone is going to be able to use public transport.
Well, there are a lot of factors and points that explain why EV taxes and public transport investment is a good option to improve the emission and impacts in the environment and general society. First of all, revenue generation. Governments may impose EV tax to offset the potential loss of revenue from fuel taxes as EVs do not consume gasoline or diesel, which are typically taxed to fund transportation infrastructure. We have also to consider the investing in public transport. Investing in public transport involves allocating funds and resources to enhance and expand public transportation services, which means that we'll have less emissions, less time spending, less cost, and obviously less traffic flow. Sustainability efforts, introducing eco-friendly, energy-efficient public transport options powered by renewable energy sources, reducing the environmental impact of mass transit. We have to consider also the accessibility. Investing in public transport enhances mobility and accessibility, making it easier for people without personal vehicles to access essential services and job opportunities. And talking about people that live in rural areas, so this is a very important point that we have to consider because maybe they do not have access to personal vehicles. So that's why investing in public transport is a good option. We have to consider the encourage sustainable choices. Implementing in EV tax can motivate individuals to choose more energy efficient EVs, reducing overall carbon emissions. And not just talking about money, not just talking about investment, we have to consider the public health. Public transport can lead to a healthier lifestyle by encouraging walking and cycling as part of daily commute. Reduced dependence on private vehicles also improves air quality, potentially reducing public health costs. And a study in British Medical Journal found the commuters using public transportation had a lower BMA than those using private transportation.
Thank you. Great. So one of the conclusions the opposition has made is the revenue of generation from this fuel. So we have decided that a rebate would be more popular with voters than a tax if political parties are willing and able to put through a legislation to support an effective rebate, then EVs will gain more media attention and greater uptake. In terms of public transport investment, there already is many studies that public transport is at their absolute max. A good example is that the Bankstown line it's completely closing, and this is due to the metro. So everyone who lives in the Bankstown, their line is closing for an entire 12 months. So already on top of the public transport issues that have been ongoing in Sydney, an entire line is closing down. So yeah, public transport is operating at its highest capacity, and especially with bus services. There's a lot of bus closures. I don't know about you guys, but there's a lot of you wait for buses. The buses are always cancelled. So sometimes if you're like running late or need a meeting, you sometimes need to catch an Uber or GoGet or something like that, because public transport sometimes is just not an option because it does fail, which is why we do need to rely on cars at the end of the day. And between petrol and diesel or electric vehicles are the clearer option. And in terms of accessibility, although walking and cycling is great, what about people who have disabilities and are not able to walk or cycle? They need and they can't get public transport, especially elderly or young children can't get public transport by themselves. This is why investing in cars is still a really great idea. And then public transport has less emissions, although this is like, I guess, a great statement. At the end of the day, we're always going to need to rely on cars. The trend of cars is not going down anytime soon. So we may as well start making that investment and start rebating people so they actually buy electric vehicles. It's approximated 1 million people buy a car each year. So even if like a little bit % of these people bought an electric vehicle, this would be a big difference within the CO2 emissions.
So the world is undeniably shifting towards a more sustainable green way of transportation. And as we think about it, EVs and electric cars are leading the way for that. And as much as it is nice, it is important to consider the financial implications, the social equity, and the infrastructure applications. And the idea of taxation of EV, as it sounds absurd, it holds merit. We've seen evidence from Norway and the United States that they've implemented taxation policies on their rising population of EVs. And the revenue that can be generated from the EV taxes can compensate for the declining fuel taxes upon the recent years. And although there's very good beneficial environmental factors of EVs, there's still some possible side effects that need to be considered. For example, the strain you can put on the power grid, the disposal of their batteries. So by implementing taxes on electric cars, the revenue that can be generated from those taxes can be used to solve these issues. And similarly, the investment in public transport is also very important in ensuring environmentally safe and sustainable environment. And public transport can help increase infrastructure, it can increase the transportation of people from rural areas to urban areas and vice versa. And it can also promote social equity. Thank you.